The People's Countryside
The People's
Environmental
Countryside
Debate
Environmental Debate Podcast. The
People's Countryside Environmental Debate Podcast.
People's Countryside Environmental Debate Podcast.
The People's Countryside Environmental Debate Podcast.
Are individualistic cultures intrinsically selfish? The question then, did time, as we now perceive it, start at a specific moment?
This is the People's Countryside Environmental Debate Podcast with me, Stuart, the Wild Man, Mabba, and
me, William Ankler. Thanks very much for joining us in this episode.
Now, we answer listener questions that are sent in. We don't see them before we press record. We approach them cold. We're not experts. We're just talking freely like most people do when they're presented with the big issues. You know, they're presented at you with no notice. So you actually see the processes we all go through just by listening to us and wading through our own biases and coming through on the other side. Now, maybe if we revisit the question next week, we might actually come up with a different answer. But today, it's cold. We have a slight apology to make. Steve from Cambridge sent in an email back in October, and unfortunately we didn't notice it straight away. So we do try and answer the questions in the order they come through. But Steve, your question will be answered in March, which is why your name wasn't read out last time when I read through all the listener questions lined up. We just hadn't noticed it in the email, but we've got it now. So 2 questions today, returning listeners. Andrew from Bradford, I'm sure he's been with us before. It's just a blur now. Clodagh from Larne in County Antrim, Northern Ireland. She's back. 2 questions. What's the first question?
First question then from Andrew and Bradford, and I think you're right. I think Andrew sent in questions previously. I'm sure if I do a search, even in this document, his name will come up. Yeah. And Andrew's question then is... he
asked one just before Christmas.
Right, fantastic. So it's this second question, potentially,
yeah.
Right? So Andrew's question then, are individualistic cultures intrinsically selfish?
I can't think of an individualist. Well, I suppose what Andrew's getting at is in the UK we have a me culture, but I don't really think when you dig down it's truly individualistic. But the other, it pops into my mind, you can't actually, thinking about your own health, your own benefit, your own well-being. Is that really a selfish thing to do? Because if you want to help other people, you have to help yourself first.
When you're on a flight, for example,
don't fart.
They go through exactly, but they go through the safety demonstration, and one of them is if the cabin loses pressure, there'll be oxygen masks will fall from above you, and you have to put your mask on. And in the instructions, they always tell you every single time, put your mask on before helping anybody else. It's because that you're no use to anybody else if you're basically asphyxiated. If you're not helping yourself, then you can't help other people. What I think this is really getting the root at for me is that an individualistic culture is actually a human trait itself.
It's when it goes too far. That becomes selfish.
It could be that some cultures have more individualistic traits. I don't want to point to any direction, potentially the US, but that's quite generic. I know a lot of altruistic. I've known a lot of altruistic Americans from the US, for example. I think it works at an individual level. It depends on how far that individualism goes, in how much it permeates your thinking. You have to look after yourself. Absolutely.
If everybody's individualistic in a culture, then you could argue that they're not individualistic because you're doing what everybody else is doing.
This is true, but I would say that from my reading of that statement there is that the only thing you think about in every circumstance is yourself.
I'm thinking about Tibetan monks. They live in communes and they're very individual people. They don't see that as being selfish. Other people do. So maybe somebody who's individualistic can't see themselves as being selfish. Maybe the experience other people have of engaging with them, that person might appear selfish, but what baggage is the recipient bringing into it to feel they're being selfish against? I don't know what word it is.
That you're getting to the crux of this question in some ways. I'm intrigued in what experience Andrew has had to make this question manifest in the first place. How did this where did this question, what experience or experiences has this question come from? If you go out into the world and you see on a daily basis, or even hour by hour basis, you see individualistic, or I would almost say selfish behaviour by people around you who are not necessarily thinking about others and the impact their behaviour has on other people. That's individualistic.
We've had a lot of criticism over the years of we're not experts, we need to prepare for these questions, but there's enough people preparing. We like to give a cold experience.
Yeah.
But what's more interesting than the questions is from listeners is actually for me not and over and above making myself an expert so I appear ready for the question. Is that, as you've just said, is having the people who have set the questions in front of us, so we dig in what's motivated the setting of that question. That's more interesting than the question. Every question
baggage has a background to it. I wouldn't use the word baggage, just got a background to it. For example, Vinroy sent the question in. Vinroy from Jamaica, if you remember, said, "I've been ill. I've been thinking about something." And if you're laid in bed ill, often the only thing you can really do is think. That's just an example of where a question comes from. Andrew, if you're listening to this particular episode, think about what we've just said in response to your question, and think of another question that will follow that up. We won't be discussing it probably until March or April time now, but we do, and I will also say we do come at these questions cold, but in so many ways we do not either.
Because we've done so many of these, a lot of them overlap.
We do so many of these. We discuss these sorts of topics really deeply as we possibly can do. But also both of us have opinions in the first place anyway. So
something that comes to mind here is sports people. You have to be completely focused, and a lot of them are doing it for so they bring benefit to their family as well.
Yeah.
But you have to be selfish in some way, to do that. And so I do wonder whether there are other terms. Somebody may appear selfish, but they're actually being focused. It really depends. It's a case by case thing. I don't think individually that word. They have to be selfish.
See, it's difficult, isn't it? Individualism is a very difficult word to. It's an English word that's got too many. Individualistic. It's got far too many consonants, I would say, for an English word. Yeah. Next question. We'll go on to the next question. Clodagh from Larne in County Antrim in Northern Ireland. Thank you very much for your question. Not your first one. Thanks for sending this.
Hopefully it won't be your last.
Yes. Please continue to send the questions in because they're always good. The question then: did time, as we now perceive it, start at a specific moment?
Well, this is the cutting edge of some scientific thinking, especially black holes. Time. Some people say black holes are the beginning of time, and some are saying the end of time. That's where the thinking is. And time is a human construct to make sense of occurrences. Existences, but I don't think that time has to have a beginning, a middle, or an end. Things may be just doing their thing. There may not have ever been a before and after. But let me look at this question again. Did time, as we now perceive it, start at a specific moment? Well, some people, the way they perceive time, there has to be a beginning. But I think I've said in this podcast, I'm not even sure what time is. Nobody. This is cutting edge of scientific theory at the moment.
I would look at it as the concept of time started when we, as humans, began to realise these cycles that were happening. The moon is a great example of the phases of the moon, and early humans were obviously looking up at the sky, and the moon's been companion of the Earth for billions of years, way before we even turned up. And the phases of the moon are so reliable, and the moon's not going anywhere. It's moving slightly. Incrementally moving away from us, like an inch every year. So very, 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 very slowly. But the phases of the moon are so reliable that our early ancestors would have looked up and thought, "Oh, okay. Well, it's now the time to harvest. It's now the time to whatever plant, and the moon would be a certain phase or something like that." So that's where structures were built around that. I can't remember. Archaeologists found some holes dug in the ground somewhere I can't remember. I've read a book very recently about the moon. And I can't. The actual fact doesn't stick in my head. But I think that when we actually recognise things like the moon, the phases of the moon, the way the sun is in the sky, and that type of thing, that's where maybe sun worship came from as well. That's when we really started to understand time. And time is actually being able to count or being able to understand the rhythms of time actually has helped us become the animal in some ways.
A word you nearly said there, regulate. I think we use the concept of time to regulate our understanding. But our time, just because we understand it and have invented it, doesn't mean it exists. Anyway, let's think about actions. I would say, merging the two questions today, is the people who are around you consider selfish. Think about, are they being selfish or are they being focused for the wider good? And what is charging you to feel that they're being selfish? Is it something you're bringing into the pot? And also, the other thing to consider on an environmental angle is concept of our understanding of time. If time isn't there, and it's just a series of processes that could be, infinity may not be there. You say, oh, it goes on infinitesimally. That's another complicated word. Well, it might not go on infinitesimally. Okay, I'm not going to say it a third time because it's going to sound very different. And
there are infinite ways to say that word.
Yeah. So if time doesn't exist and infinity doesn't exist, does anything have to exist for us to be comfortable? Actions.
Yeah, mine is, well, let's see if there's an action buried in this, because I'm still really...
This is more considering, I'd say, my actions.
The Clodagh question has really got me interested. But time itself is a concept of our own experience, and that experience comes from within our own brain. We often think that the outside world is affecting us, but actually we're projecting to the outside world. We project ourselves, our mind, our brain makes reality. Time itself is a really unusual concept for me. When I think about my own life experience and time, that sometimes something can feel like it was yesterday and it was 20 years ago. Something can feel like a year ago and it was only last week.
Well, it might not be 20 years ago, because you experience it in different ways. Astronauts, they could go to Mars, come back, and it feels like a blip to them, but it could be a year to us.
Well, yeah, that's
time bends.
That's
as well.
Yeah, but there's also the concept of we know there's been this idea of when somebody's been in an accident, for example, say they've been in a car accident, which is quite a violent impact, they perceive time slowing down. And the reason why you perceive time slowing down is really down to your own visual cortex not being able to deal with the amount of information that is given at such a fast speed. It's the same as if you ask your phone or your laptop or your computer to do too much, it will start to buffer. That's exactly the same reason. Your brain it slows down because it's got so much information and it feels like it's in slow motion. So time itself has not changed. It's just your perception on it.
That's an interesting one, because motorcyclists, when you're taught when to crash, and when you're sliding along the ground, you're taught to filter out all the crap and just focus on what you need to do to avoid the upcoming object. So you slide. So actually, you're saying time slows down because you're getting overwhelmed, but actually, a motorcyclist crashing that they're actively reducing what's in their mind, so slowing it down because they're focusing more intently.
I would say that's because if you're going into a motorcycle race,
you're just riding down the road. I'm thinking about all motorcyclists. I was thinking about road motorcyclists there when you're going down the road. And I was thinking down by the Swan. I was thinking about the Swan down the road, the original Swan. I came off a bike there and I slid about 20 metres on my ass. And I had leathers on and they protected me, but I didn't have much leather left on my ass at the end of it.
Oh, anyway, that's what that brown streak is.
Yeah,
that part of the road.
Anyway, I was sliding down the road, and that's what I was thinking of. Is I was aware where the curbs were. I was aware of keeping my limbs flexible, because if you hit a curb with your arms, you're going to snap your arm.
But so, because you were.
I was thinking about all motorcyclists.
That was because you were also aware of that situation. Yeah. But if it was a situation where you had an accident that it's just come out of nowhere, that's when that sort of phenomenon can happen.
Yeah.
So our concept of time then is that you have to remember that everything that you see around you is you're having a very slight delay. It's about half a second for the light to even get from the back of your eye to your brain,
and your brain to process
it. So no, there's more time on top of that. So it could be it's, and it all depends on your own cognitive abilities and functions as well.
So for the environmental angle, is just when you're getting a bit hot under the collar about sustainable or unsustainability, just spend a bit of time just exploring these ingrained concepts that underpin all this stuff.
My action for the second question would be, when you get an opportunity, do something where you're not thinking about the time. Just let it be.
Yeah, and don't fill your time up telling everybody on social media what you've done today. Please. Please. Please.